uh, Zoom accounts here, if you could, and I'll have Luke start the business meeting, and then shortly thereafter, we'll have Reinhard's talk. So it really helps to hear the speakers when everybody's muted. There's a lot less background noise. So Luke, floor is yours.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. We've been able to have a very good month with trying to fill some positions on the board. As a matter of fact, filling 2 positions that we've been seeking for quite a while, and actually creating a new position for family's chair. You may have seen an email out about Todd Williams. Unfortunately, Todd cannot join tonight because he's got a family event. He has a son getting confirmed tonight. He wanted me to say something to the group because he really wants to seek out interest in family hikes and family activities, things like that. So he looks forward to hearing from anyone. Again, his email is on our contacts page on the website, okay, at family@adk-jvc.org. And he'd like to hear from families. And he's going to be talking about biking the C&O Canal. I don't know what the C&O is. Hopefully somebody does, at our June program.
It's in Maryland and Washington, D.C.
Okay, thanks.
It's a rail trail.
Okay,
Chesapeake and Ohio.
thank you. So he said to be on the lookout for a family-oriented hike in June. Please email him with any questions or requests. I will let the group know. I was looking at the data for our membership. We get data every month on new members and things like that. And this past month, out of, I think it was roughly about 15 new members, a lot of those were younger members, and a lot of those were families, much higher percentage than usual. So that was a good sign as well. We also were able to fill a couple other positions. Katie Kusick is going to be the program's chair, and Jim Miller is going to be the trails co-chair. Since they're both on the call tonight, do you want to just say hello?
Sure. I'm Katie Kuzak. I'm the new programs chair, and I encourage anybody who has a great story to share about a trip or an adventure to contact me. And if you want to present to the group sometime.
Yeah, I'm Jim Miller. I'll be working with Larry as trails co-chair. I'll be doing the overnight trips. So if anybody's interested in leading anything, please let me know.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Jim. We are still seeking to find someone to be a young members chair. So if anyone has any interest in that, please contact me. We'd love to get someone to pick that back up. Other than that, we do have Jack, I saw you. Do you want to say anything about the Saturday Parks Cleanup Day?
Yes. Remember, this Saturday from 8:30 to noon, actually 9 to noon, but 8:30 for registration. We're doing Pick Up the Parks with Monroe County at Webster Park. We'll meet at Creek Bend Shelter. We're not unable to use the lodge this year since all the lodges are rented. But hopefully the weather, it shouldn't be much chance of a rain, and not too much litter around Webster Park. I've been up there for the last couple of weeks and haven't seen too much around there. But talking to the park supervisor, he says, if you can, bring a rake, because there are places to rake up some twigs and other branches and that off of the grassy areas. But otherwise, I hope to see you there. Remember to bring your mask, and if you have gloves, bring those.
All right, thanks, Jack. Okay, I think we're good. Thanks everybody for joining the call. I see we're up to 52 participants, so that number will grow. And Jill, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, I'm privileged tonight to introduce you to our own Reinhard Gesselmeyer. He is an unabashed peak bagger. In fact, in the back of his book, he tells us that he's a longtime ADK member. He's an Adirondack 46er. He's a winter 46er. He's a Northeast 115er. He's hiked the Northville Placid Trail in addition to the Appalachian Trail, and he's climbed Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. So let's welcome Reinhard as our speaker tonight about the AT. I can't wait to hear his story. I've waited to hear the final parts and the whole thing at once. So welcome, Reinhard.
Thanks for that introduction. Jill, let me just get this going here. I've got you on share screen. Can everybody see the screen?
No,
You cannot.
no,
Not yet.
No,
We see you.
Okay.
I see everybody.
Who's this? Joyce. There's one of Joyce.
There you go. We got it now.
You got it now?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, let me just get this a little bit better. Is everybody still good?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Jill, thanks for that introduction. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, you sound
I-
good.
I
Okay,
can, yes,
okay.
it's good.
I'd like to thank ADK for having me, asking me to give this presentation. I finished my hike in 2019, and it's always nice to reminisce a little bit about my hike. What you see in the upper right-hand corner is the logo for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, which is the umbrella organization that oversees the preservation and management of the AT.
Can you kill all that?
The AT is maintained largely by volunteers. There's 31 affiliated hiking clubs that are members of the ATC, and it's through the efforts of those clubs and the volunteers that we have such a nice trail. I do want to preface my presentation by saying that everything I'm going to talk about is pre-COVID. Okay, so I finished my hike in 2019 before we had the COVID outbreak. And I know 2020 was a tough year for AT thru-hikers, but everything I'm going to talk about is pre-COVID. I'm going to present my in two parts, really. My first part of my talk is going to focus about the AT in general. And then the second part, I'll talk specifically about my hike. So the AT, it runs from Springer Mountain, Georgia to Mount Katahdin, Maine, along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains. And when I finished my hike in 2019, it was 2,192 miles long. The mileage changes a little bit every year. Usually it gets a little bit longer by a mile or so, depending on, some reroutes or whatever they're doing along the trail. So it changes a little bit, but it does pass through 14 states, including our home state of New York. And Virginia has got the most miles at 550, just about a quarter of their miles of the AT are in Virginia.
Wow.
Maine and New Hampshire are considered the two toughest states because of the terrain and the climbs and so forth. But in my opinion, anyway, they're also the most scenic. And the AT is a very famous, well-known trail, and people really from all over the world come to hike the AT. So there's multiple ways to hike the length of the AT. You can hike it as what's called a no-bow thru-hiker. And a thru-hiker, by the way, is defined by the ATC as someone that completes the entire trail over a 12-month period, okay? It doesn't have to be in a calendar year. It can go from one year to the next, but it's got to be over a 12-month period. But anyway, a no-bow is somebody that starts at Springer Mountain, Georgia, and hikes straight through to Mount Katahdin, Maine. A sobo is somebody that, obviously does the reverse. They start in Maine and hike south. A flip-flopper is somebody that, you know, let's say there's many different forms of flip-flopper, but as a for instance, someone might start at Springer Mountain and hike to the midpoint in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, and then for whatever reason, they'll flip north to Maine and then hike back south back to Harpers Ferry. And there's also section hikers. You know, some folks will just hike the trail. They might take a week off every year, and over the course of 20, 25 years, they might finish the entire trail that way. And they are recognized by the ATC as what's called a 2,000 miler once they finish it as section hikers. But just a few facts and figures about the AT. Typically for an AT through hike, it takes, you know, the average person takes them about 5 to 7 months. And usually there's about 3,000 through hike attempts made in any given year with about a 20 to 25% success rate. And 80% of the through hikers are nobos. They start at Springer Mountain. Now, one thing I want to alert you to, there's a hiker bubble. It runs roughly from early March to mid-April. And those two photos on the right are not my photos, but if you start the trail down south at Springer Mountain as a nobo, during that time frame, the trails can get pretty crowded. Okay, it'll thin out, you know, and people will drop off the trail. But you're gonna start in what's called that hiker bubble. One thing that kind of surprised me about the AT was there's a lot of climbing. Okay, you're either going uphill or you're going downhill. But there is, you know, I know I had somebody comment to me, well, the AT is flat. You know, well, it's not flat. There are some flat sections, of course, but it is, you know, there is a fair amount of climbing. There's a lot of good statistics out there on the internet, but one of the things that I learned was that the average through hike cost in 2018 was around $6,000. And that includes replacement gear. You know, the average through hiker is going to go through about 3 pairs of boots, but it does not include the cost of new gear to start your hike. Okay, so one thing, and it does happen on occasion, one thing you want to avoid is running out of money on the trail. I ran across a couple of folks that had to get off. Their funds were just dried up. So you need to plan accordingly. Obviously, you can hike for less than that, but it's about an average cost. So where to sleep when you're on the AT? And I've got pretty much all of the options listed there. Oh, okay. Those numbers in parentheses are the nights where I slept. You know, I spent 53 nights in a tent, 37 in a shelter or lean-to, and so on. You have to carry a shelter of some kind, whether a tent, a hammock, or a tarp, because you can't rely on being somewhere where you're going to have a roof over your head. Even the shelters down south, they call them shelters. Up north, we call them lean-tos. But you know, your hiking distance may not coincide with where there's a spot to sleep, and even if you get to a shelter, the shelters can be full when you get there. So you've got to be prepared to camp. And there's many camping spots along the trail, whether it's in a designated campsite or camping in the area around a shelter or stealth camping. And when staying at a hostel, there are a number of hostels along the trail. And when staying there, a lot of times folks will spend what's called a 0 day, basically taking a day off of the trail just to kind of recharge a little bit. There are 260 shelters along the AT. The average spacing is about 8.5 miles, but the spacing can vary, okay? It might be, 5 miles, or it could be 15 or 18 miles between shelters. But on average, average spacing is about 8.5 miles, except in New York State, okay? In New York State, there's a stretch of 32 miles where there's no shelters. So you have to plan accordingly, okay? But, shelters can be quite varied in terms of their age, their size, and amenities. A typical shelter is what I've got shown there in the upper left. They're, a 3-sided wooden structure with a wooden floor and a sloped roof. And, most shelters have some amenities. There's typically a privy nearby. Generally, there's a water source not too far away. When I say not too far away, maybe within a quarter or half a mile. Sometimes the shelters have generous overhangs, which are pretty nice when you got a wind-driven rain. A lot of them have a picnic table. Usually there's a fire ring nearby. Most of the shelters are 1 story. Some of them are 2 story. And they generally will sleep 6 to 8 people in a typical, your typical 1 story shelter. But on a rainy, stormy night, you get crowded in there. Okay, you make do, you make room for folks to get in the shelter. And I've been in a six person shelter where there's been like 10, 11 people. So you're kind of chummy in there, but you do when it's a stormy night. And shelters are typically first come, first serve, except in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, where they have kind of their own rules with reference to a reservation system and so forth. So as I mentioned, most shelters have a privy nearby, the exception being in Tennessee. For whatever reason, in Tennessee, they don't believe in privies, okay? There they give you a shovel. So when you're wandering around the woods at night near a Tennessee shelter, you want to watch your step, okay? But generally there's a privy nearby around these shelters, and some of them are pretty nice, okay? Some of the privies are pretty darn nice. A lot of them have quite a bit of ventilation to them, and there's a few of those thunder boxes still out there. I got a chuckle out of the two privies in the bottom picture. The one on the left, the person that outfitted that, putting the flush handle there, had quite a sense of humor. And then the one in the lower right, that's a privy in Maine, actually, and it's a 2-holer. And they actually have a cribbage board between the seats. So if you're so inclined and you've got a privy mate in there with you, you can have at it with a game of cribbage if you want. Typically, water is not a problem along the trail. There's usually plenty of water sources along the trail. You want to be carrying at least 2 quarts. I carry typically about 2.5 quarts. But you have to treat your water, whether treat it or filter it. If you do not, you really run the risk of catching something nasty like Giardia. And there's a lot of different ways to take care of treating your water. A lot of folks use the filters. Of course, the filters, they can be a little bit problematic when the temperature gets much below freezing. I hiked with some folks who ditched their filters and went to chemical treatment. I used the chemical treatment, the chlorine dioxide drops, the 2-part Aquamira. I would say they're probably equally used, whether it's chemical treatment or filters. What I've seen based on my observation, they're both about used the same. On average, it was about 3 to 5 days for me between opportunities where I could either pick up a mail drop or resupply shop at a nearby town. Of course, it depends on your hiking pace too. It could be longer, all depends. But I typically did mail drops supplemented with resupply shopping. And most hikers I encountered, most thru-hikers did not do mail drops. Most of them did, the resupply shopping. But I did both, mail drops with resupply. And for mail drops, you need a person back home, obviously, that's going to take care of getting that sent to you. And I was fortunate. I had my wife. She was my trail angel back home. And you always got to be looking ahead about 10 days. I'm going to be such and such a place. I typically had my mail drops sent to a hostel. I kind of look ahead where am I going to be 10 days from now? And I let KN know where to send things. The reason I have not recommended for mail drops by the post office picture there is because with the post office, they have limited hours. So, if you arrive on a Saturday at 12:01 and the post office is closed at noon, you're having to hang around till Monday morning to retrieve your mail drop. So I generally, with very few exceptions, I did not send a mail drop to a post office. I highly recommend these 2 guides, okay, both of which I had on my phone when I hiked the trail. They're both equally popular on the AT, and they're both of these guides are updated annually. And once they're loaded on your phone, you don't need cell coverage to access them, because cell service sometimes on the trail, is non-existent. It's generally pretty good. I had Verizon, and it was pretty good, but there are stretches where you don't have cell coverage. But anyway, Gut Hook, the one on the left there, it's an app for your phone. It's got a GPS capable map on it. And it has a wealth of real-time information on Gut Hook. So a hiker can comment in, for instance, let's say there's a water source at milepost 999, and they'll comment in, they say, June 10th, water source is dry. So that's nice. You can always be kind of looking ahead at hiker comments and see what to expect. Okay. The AT guide is also a very good reference guide. I had a PDF on my phone, and Kayanne, she had the hard copy back home, which made it really easy to coordinate for mail drops. Okay. And both of these guides have a lot of information. They got profiles, obviously distances, locations of towns, hostels, water sources, resupply options, shuttle drivers, phone numbers, hours, etc. They really are very happy. Very handy. And normally whenever I'm doing a hike, I'm carrying a paper map, but I did not for the AT. And part of the reason I didn't carry a map for the AT is it's, number one, it's a fairly well-worn trail. And number two, it's marked with these 2-inch by 6-inch white blazes. Now, sometimes, you can see almost, they're so close together, you can see from one white blaze to the next. But sometimes you might be hiking, a quarter mile or more, and you say, geez, I wish they wouldn't have been so skimpy with the paint, and you're wondering, geez, am I on the trail? But generally it's pretty hard to get lost on the AT, although I did get off the trail a few times, and I got out Gut Hook, and Gut Hook was deadly accurate. It told me, hey pal, you're off the trail. Okay. And I made my way back to the trail. But the one time, if it's snowing out and you're breaking trail, the first guy on the trail in the morning, and it's a wind-driven snow and it's obliterated the white blazes on the trees, well, then it can be, a little tricky too. The trail's going through here somewhere, but it can be a little bit difficult to find. And again, there were a few occasions where they had occurred for me, and I used Gut Hook. So you got to keep your food and toiletries safe, okay, away from the bears. And I would say about a third of the shelters along the trail, they had either a bear pole, a bear box, or a bear cable that you could use. And they're very handy when they have that. But, you can't rely on that. If you're camping, obviously, or you're at a shelter without these amenities, you've got to know how to hang a bear bag. And there's, multiple different ways on how to hang a bear bag. But you've got to be prepared to do that. As far as bear canisters are concerned, I got to be honest with you, I don't recall seeing any thru-hikers that were carrying a bear canister. And there was only, to my recollection, there was only one section, I think it was about 7 miles long. It was in Georgia, actually, where if you were camping in that 7-mile stretch, it was a requirement that you had a bear canister. But, most people, they just hike through that. They don't camp in that 7-mile section. Anyway, as far as trail conditions go, obviously they're going to vary. You'll get a whole gamut of trail conditions. The trails, I think, are steeper and a little more difficult up north. The mountains are taller down south, but I think the trails are easier hiking down south. And, there are a lot of switchbacks too down south. But your hiking pace is obviously going to vary depending on, what the trail conditions you encounter. On a nice, easy trail, it's pretty easy to pound out 15 to 20 miles. But when you're in rocky conditions and a lot of steep uphills, you might be doing really good to get 10 miles done. I'm not going to go through my gear list, but feel free to contact me. I've got my email address at the end of the presentation. Feel free to contact me if you got questions about gear. But, the gear over the years has really gotten so good. We benefit a lot from all the improvements they've made over the years with reference to gear, and it's gotten very lightweight. My pack typically weighed about 32 to 33 pounds on average, and that was with full water, plus about 4 to 5 days worth of food. I weighed a little bit more than that if I was carrying, early on some winter specific gear, but I think that was about an average weight for most AT AT through hikers in particular. You don't want to be that guy in the lower left there with a behemoth 60-pound or plus pack, you know, because the trail is over 2,000 miles long and your body's going to take a pounding. And usually when you see somebody hiking with that big of a pack, it's somebody that's just gotten on the trail maybe, okay? Or they might be just a weekend backpacker. But, you know, you don't want to be carrying that much weight around because your body's going to really take a pounding. I did, that picture in the lower right, I did come across a couple of guys. We were all carrying Gossamer gear packs, which are not that popular, but we said, hey, you know, we got to get our picture taken. You're going to get rain on the AT, okay? So you want to have good rain gear, whether it's, you know, a rain jacket, rain pants, a rain poncho, rain skirt, whatever. You got to be prepared to, you know, to have rain gear, okay? And the general saying for the AT is that for every 3 non-rain days, you're going to have 1 rainy day. I had rain every day for the first 8 days, and I said to myself, geez, Mother Nature owes me 24 nice weather days. You know, it didn't quite work out that way, but in any event, at first, you know, the rain didn't really bother me. Just, okay, it's raining, you know, we'll hike, carry on. But I have to tell you, towards the tail end of my hike, I kind of got sick of the rain. And when it rained, I just said, oh boy, gotta hike now, okay? So it can, you know, can wear on you a little bit. I want to talk now, you know, a little bit about my hike specifically, but there's a picture, my wife and I in the lower left there, and my wife, Can, she was my trail angel back home. And it's important, you know, if you're going to be gone for an extended period on, you know, whether it's on AT or another hike, you know, for weeks or months at a time, you don't want to be worrying about having, you know, who's paying the bills or who's cutting the grass, who's taking care of things at home. And I was very fortunate that my good partner, Can, took care of that. She was my trail angel. But anyway, February 9th, I was off. I took the train to Gainesville, Georgia, the Amtrak, just because I wanted to take the train. You can fly down there too, but I took the Amtrak, and from the train station, I caught a shuttle ride over to the trail. But my good friend, Bill Schweinfurth, was there at the train station in Rochester to see me off bright and early. I think it was about 5:30 in the morning. And Bill, you know, he, every day I got a text message from Bill with a photo attached to it, a Go Uppa photo, okay? So Uppa was my AT trail name. And it really, you know, Bill, those photos really boosted my spirits. And I expect that some of you folks zooming in here may have been coursed by Bill to participating in a Go Uppa sign holding. But in any event, it was a nice touch by Bill. I did keep a daily trail journal while I was on the trail, trailjournals.com. And it was a good way for me to keep my family and friends informed of, you know, what mischief I was getting into and making sure that I was okay and whatnot. It was a good way for me to document my hike. I was really glad that I did that. But anyway, there I am, day 1. I'm at Amicalola Falls State Park, which is actually at the base of Springer Mountain. And there's about an 8.8 mile approach trail from Amicalola Falls to the summit of Springer, where the trail actually starts. There's a couple of plaques up on the summit of Springer Mountain, which is mile 0. I checked in at the visitor station on February 10th, and I was NOBO number 62 at the time that I registered. The first hostel you come to, I didn't stay there, but the first hostel you come to on the AT is at Neal's Gap in Georgia. It's Mountain Crossings. It's a very well-known hostel and outfitter. The trail, as you see, goes right through the building. There's an archway there, it goes right through the building. And they have this tree out front of the hostel, a boot tree. And a lot of folks, you know, for whatever reason, they started at Springer, and, you know, the AT was not really something they were anticipating what it was going to be like. And for whatever reason, they decided to get off the trail at Neal's Gap, and they tie the laces on their boots together and throw them up in this tree. So there's probably a few halfway decent boots up there. But I started out as a solo hiker on the AT, and very early on in my hike, I met these 3 guys that are in the photo with me, the photo on the left. And we formed kind of a trail family. You know, we called ourselves the 4 Horsemen. We got along really well. We liked getting up early in the morning before daylight to start our daily hikes. We liked pounding out about similar miles during the day. And we stayed together for about 400 miles before a couple of the guys got injured and had to get off the trail, unfortunately. But anyway, I also hiked off and on with that group in the upper right there. I coined them the Young Guns. They were all in their 20s, all young, strong hikers, a great group of young people. And I'd see them periodically off and on the trail. They were all stronger and faster than me, but I hiked long. Okay, I get up in the morning before daylight, and I'd have probably a couple hours on the trail before they get going. Inevitably, they'd pass me on the trail. You know, they'd motor on by me, but quite often I'd see them at the end of the day. We would be camping somewhere along the trail, and I'd see them at the end of the day. And I saw the Young Guns group off and on up until I reached Pennsylvania. But one of the advantages of early morning starts is you get to catch a lot of sunrises, okay? And I have to tell you, I really enjoyed, hiking early morning before daylight under a headlamp on the trail. You know, everything was peaceful, and it was just me and the woods and my headlamp, and the forest has kind of an eerie feel to it when it's pitch dark out like that. And I really kind of enjoyed the early morning starts. Top of Georgia is the first hostel that I stayed at. And I stayed at 23 different hostels along the trail during my hike. Sometimes I stayed at a hostel multiple nights if I was either taking a zero or was recovering from some ailment of some kind. But most hostels are not right on the AT. You've either got to walk, a distance to them, or hitchhike a ride to the hostel, or very often the hostels will provide shuttle service and come and get you, okay? Come and get you and pick you up. But even though there might not be, right on the AT, most hostels are near a town of some kind. For instance, Top of Georgia was about 9 miles from the town of Hiawassee. And the nice thing is, most hostel owners will give you a shuttle ride to and from the town so you can do resupply shopping. Like they say, hey, 5 o'clock shuttle ride to the local supermarket or whatever. Most hostels will provide that service. But hostel is a nice place to get out of the weather, sleep in a bunk. They generally have a mattress. Might not be the best mattress, but you're not sleeping on the ground. It's a good place to take a shower, get cleaned up a little bit, do your laundry, pick up a mail drop, do some resupply shopping, and maybe even have dinner in town at a restaurant. So hostels are nice. The cost typically is about $20 to $35 was my experience for a one-night stay. Okay, and that usually includes the cost of a shower. They give you a towel. If you want to do a load of laundry, they usually charge $4 or $5 extra for that. The fellow that ran the hostel, Top of Georgia, in the upper right there, the guy to the left, Sir Pax-a-Lot was his trail name, and he was a triple crowner. He had thru-hiked not only the AT, but also the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail. So he was a good, he gave a pep talk while we were there. 8 days into my hike, I really thought my hike was over. I'm sitting there soaking my feet in the creek, and I know I got a smile on my face, but on the inside, I'm crying. I suffer from plantar fasciitis, and I've had it for years and years and always been able to keep it under control. But for whatever reason, my heels became extremely inflamed, and it was painful, every step. And I was getting worse and worse until I finally figured out that it was a problem with the insoles in my boots. And anyway, once I corrected that problem, I'm wearing orthotics, but anyway, once I fixed the problem with the insoles, it was immediate relief. Okay, it took me a couple of weeks for the inflammation to go away completely, but immediately once I fixed that problem, my heels started feeling better. It's always a momentous occasion when you cross a state line. Okay, Darien, North Carolina, Georgia, 1 state down, 13 to go. And there periodically are markers along the trail that point out certain things. For instance, that was in Virginia, the picture on the right, where they noted the Eastern Continental Divide. So trail magic. Trail magic's an act of kindness provided by a trail angel. And it could be something as simple as somebody leaves, you know, a few snacks or foods or drinks, I mean, alongside the trail near a road crossing. It could be something much more elaborate where there, somebody, you know, a kind trail angel like Pineapple has got a nice spread out, you know, all kinds of food, and she'll cook you something hot to order there. She had a stove going with some chairs to sit down. But no matter how, you know, simple or elaborate it is, and sometimes it might be nothing more than a ride to someplace, okay? A trail angel will provide a ride somewhere. It's especially appreciated when you get a shuttle ride to a hospital because of an injury, which I had a couple of times. Sometimes a trail angel will provide a place to stay, okay? But however simple or elaborate, trail magic and trail angels are very much appreciated, you know, and I really benefited by some very nice acts of human kindness while I was on the trail. For 4.5 days, I was in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is really a beautiful park. I did have some rain and overcast skies going through there, but I could nevertheless tell it was really, really spectacular. Clingman's Dome, the photo on the left there, that's the highest point on the AT. I did climb up to the top of that tower. I didn't really care for that tower architecturally. To me, it looked like something out of Star Wars. But anyway, I went up to the top of that tower. No views. It was socked in, but there were no views, unfortunately. That knob, that rocky knob on the right, is Charlie's Bunion in the park. Another very popular spot to have your picture taken. You know, I made it through the Smokies in February, and I thought to myself, man, I got it licked now. You know, I didn't, you know, although we had rain, didn't have any snow, and that was my concern, that we were going to get a snowstorm in Smokies. I says, man, I'm golden now. Well, as you're going to see later, that wasn't quite the case. Down south, they do have several of these mountain balds, and a bald is where they've cleared the summit years ago for grazing of livestock, and they still maintain some of these summits as balds today. And you know, the nice thing is you get spectacular views in 360-degree direction. Really nice. This Max Patch bald is a very, very famous bald. It's just outside of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I got there, as you can see by my shadow line, I got there, it was late in the day, but I was just so enthralled with the vista and the moment. I just, you know, I just stayed there, lingered on the summit. I fixed my dinner up there on the summit, and I lingered for a while, which is somewhat uncharacteristic for me. I'm usually one of those that, okay, we got to get going. But I really enjoyed that time on the Max Patch. As I said, February wasn't too bad on the trail in terms of the weather, but once March rolled around, we got snow, and I had snow off and on the trail through, you know, roughly early mid-April. That picture on the lower left is the Houston Ridge in Tennessee, and it would have been a beautiful ridge walk, you know, I think it was around 3 miles long, that hike across that ridge, but the weather was so nasty. I mean, it was bitter cold and the wind was howling. Night Train and I, one of the 4 horsemen, we were together hiking across that, and we practically got blown off our feet a couple of times. But in that photo in the upper right, that's a miniature horse just outside of Grayson Highlands in Virginia. It's just right near Mount Rogers. And when I arrived there, this horse was waiting, this miniature horse. I keep referring to them as ponies, but they're actually full-grown horses. They're just miniature horses. This horse was waiting for me. I did not sleep in a shelter that night because a skunk had taken up residence in the shelter. So I elected not to sleep in the shelter. I pitched my tent off in the woods, and this horse, I called him Buddy, okay? And he followed me over to my tent. And when I turned in for the night, Buddy was standing outside my tent. And when I got up in the morning, he was still there. So I don't know how he got out. Actually, it was right next to the Grayson Highlands, which is fenced in, and he somehow was trespassing. But he was a good little guy. The one thing about the snow, down south, they have a lot of these rhododendron bushes, and when they don't fare too well in the snow, and they really get bent over. And some of the sections were practically impassable, with these bent over rhododendrons. But anyway, it's one way or another, you find a way to make it through. Virginia is really a beautiful state. I mentioned the Grayson Highlands, hiking through there. There's a lot of spectacular scenery in Virginia. Dragon's Tooth is another prominent point, that series of rocky outcroppings in Virginia. You can climb to the top of those rocky outcroppings. Unfortunately, there's no sense of scale there, but they're actually pretty tall. I did not climb to the top of those. Seemed a little risky to me, but there are folks that will climb to the top of those rocky outcroppings. McAfee Knob, which is right near Roanoke, Virginia, that photo on the right, that is actually the most photographed spot on the entire AT. Just spectacular views. Also in Virginia is Shenandoah National Park, which is really a very, very nice park. Just very scenic, great spot to hike through. I did run across this trail maintenance crew in Virginia. They were all good folks. We had some laughs back and forth. And whenever I came across a trail maintenance crew or an individual, I always expressed my gratitude to them, because, without the efforts of volunteers like these, we wouldn't have a trail. There's really a lot of great folks out there maintaining the AT. I did take a couple of days off the trail in Roanoke. My brother came up from North Carolina, and we spent a little time together. It's always nice when you have an opportunity to take a little break for a couple of days to get off the trail. So recharge the batteries and whatnot. Also, my brother, who's an excellent cook, he tried to fatten me up, and he succeeded putting a few pounds on me. I lost the first 4 weeks I was on the trail. I lost 22 pounds, and I said to myself, I could afford to lose about 10 or 12. But not 22. And I knew that I had to start eating more. I said, at that rate, I'm going to wither away to nothing. So I did, you do burn calories on the trail, and it's kind of impossible while you're hiking to get enough calories in you. But you do take advantage whenever you're at an all-you-can-eat restaurant. Is a good opportunity to really chow down. I think they lose money on the thru-hikers when they're coming through. But anyway, Harpers Ferry in West Virginia is considered the halfway point of the AT, although by mileage, the actual AT is in Pennsylvania. The actual halfway point is in Pennsylvania. But at Harpers Ferry, the ATC, they have their headquarters there. And I went in, I checked in. I was Noble number 16 at that point in my hike. And I got treated like royalty when I went in there. They have folks there, they took my picture, and they have you sign stuff, and you get recorded in a book. They also have a nice 3D relief map of the entire AT. So it was worthwhile stopping in. And Harpers Ferry itself is a very historic town. It's right at the confluence of the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers, and it had strategic importance during the Civil War. So there's, you could spend a lot of time sightseeing in Harpers Ferry. But I made it through, West Virginia, Maryland, on into Pennsylvania. And, Eastern Pennsylvania has some tough hiking to it. There's a lot of pointy and slippery rocks in Pennsylvania. So it's not so affectionately referred to by hikers as Rocksylvania. And I fell several times there. I fell a total of 19 times on my hike. I guess I'm kind of clumsy. Fortunately, I never broke any bones, but I did fall several times on these rocks. They're slick as all get out, especially if there's dew in the morning or there's been some rain. They're like practically like ice, and they're at all angular shapes and whatever. So you got to take your time. That picture in the right, that's a bridge across the Lehigh River, the Lehigh Gap it's called. and the trail goes up that knob there, off the other side of the bridge, and that's a Superfund site. There's been a remediation project going on for many years, but the trail goes right up through there. There's a few scrambles along the way. There are warning signs not to drink the water. There is a spring up there actually, but they say don't drink this water unless it's an absolute emergency. So I passed on that water source. But anyway, finally, I'm hiking along. I got to Wind Gap, Pennsylvania, and old man's sickness in the form of an enlarged prostate caught up with me, and I couldn't urinate anymore. Okay, I was just in agony. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but I was catheterized for 9 days, which led to a bladder infection, and then I got admitted to the hospital. I was back in Rochester, got admitted to the hospital. I was given IV and antibiotics, and that knocked me off the trail for 19 days. But I got back on, and then 5 days later in Vernon, New Jersey, on May 16th, May 21st, whatever, I can't read that. Anyway, I was on the trail for 5 more days, and 6 days actually, and I started experiencing pain in my right foot. And I couldn't hardly walk, and I knew something was wrong. Turned out to be a stress fracture in my foot. I got back to Rochester eventually, and I saw my podiatrist and x-rays and all that stuff. He says, yep, you got a stress fracture. He says, you're done for the summer. They fitted me with a special boot and such, but I was knocked off the trail for the summer. And while I was at it, I did have a hernia that was bothering me while I was on the trail too. I had that repaired while I was, off for the summer. But I wasn't discouraged. I still thought I could finish my through hike. So I got back on the trail on August 30th. And at this point, I was concerned about being able to continue with my through hike as a nobo and making it in time to Mount Katahdin before they closed the summit, which is typically somewhere around mid-October. They close it because of the weather. So what I did was I flipped ahead to Mount Katahdin in Maine, and now I became a flip-flopper and was hiking south. The first night I stayed at this very nice lodge, and well, I say nice, I mean it's a lodge. It really was a hostel. It's staying totally old park. I resumed my through hike attempt on August 30th up Mount Katahdin, and Mount Katahdin is really an iconic peak. It's just a fantastic peak. There are a few scrambles along the way, but nothing major. And unfortunately, I didn't have views. I was socked in. It was my second time up Katahdin. I was socked in this time, but nevertheless, I was still very elated when I got to the summit of Katahdin. So the next day after summiting Katahdin, I entered Maine's famous 100-mile wilderness, okay? And the 100-mile wilderness is remote, but it's not as remote as the sign says, or that the Maine Tourism Department would lead you to believe, okay? There are some road crossings through there, service roads and such. They tell you to be sure to pack 10 days worth of food when you're going through there. It didn't take me 10 days. I think it took me just about 7 days to get through the 100-mile wilderness. My pack was a little heavier because of the extra food I was carrying. You can pay for a service that will actually, at one of these service road crossings, they'll actually leave some resupply for you in a container. It's kind of expensive, but that is an option. I did not do that, but it is an option. And of course, the one thing about Maine, it's really spectacular. The views are just gorgeous. You're in the wilderness for sure. And Maine's got many beautiful lakes. Here I'm camped alongside one of them. There's many of these lakes that the AT takes you by. Really, really nice. And I mentioned earlier that the AT is international. There's some of the countries represented of folks that I kind of met while I was hiking. Again, folks from all over the world. I came across these three folks sitting in this lean-to here, in the 100-mile wilderness. They were from Australia. We had a nice conversation. They're airplane pilots for an Australian airline, and they were just over in the US on a holiday, hiking the 100-mile wilderness. So, you know, it's interesting to meet folks from around the world. At one of the service road crossings in 100-mile wilderness, again, I was treated to some very nice trail magic by Trail Angel Baguette. She was a former thru-hiker. Baguette and her mom completed a thru hike in 2017. And so now she was given back. And again, when you come across trail magic in the middle of this 100-mile wilderness, you say, well, this 100-mile wilderness isn't that remote. You know, if there's trail magic set up in the middle of the wilderness. But anyway, at the southern end of the 100-mile wilderness in the town of Monson, Maine, there's this very nice hostel, Shaw's Hiker Hostel. I did stay there one night, and it's a very nice, very well-run hostel. For some reason, Maine doesn't believe in providing bridges across their creeks and rivers. Okay, so you got to be prepared to do some fords. At this particular stream, Big Wilson Stream, they at least had a cable strung across, which you could hang on to kind of maintain your balance. But you know, there's several of these fords up in Maine. The Kennebec River is a major river in Maine, and you're not fording across that. You know, there's all kinds of warning signs. It's in the guides. Don't even think about fording across the Kennebec. And, you know, there have been, unfortunately, some tragic accidents that have happened where people have tried to do a ford and they've gotten caught when there was a dam release. And I think there's been a couple of deaths, actually, of people that have foolishly tried to ford the Kennebec River. But the nice thing is the local hiking club provides shuttle service in the form of a canoe to take you across the trail. So there's even, as you see in a picture in the bottom, there's even a white blaze painted in the bottom of the canoe. This photo is from one of the summits of the Bigelows in southern Maine. So Maine's got 14 peaks over 4,000 feet. The AT doesn't go over all of them, of course, but 11 of those peaks are in southern Maine, and the trail's pretty rugged. You know, a lot of climbs. It is rugged in southern Maine. But also, as I said earlier, it's spectacular. You know, when you just feel humbled when you're standing there on the summit of one of these mountains in Maine or on an exposed ridge line and look out at the vastness of the Maine wilderness. You really kind of, it takes your breath away, and you realize how insignificant you are when you're looking out. Anyway, heading southbound on the AT, I came. There was about a 1 mile stretch down a fairly steep smooth granite slope called the Mahoosic Arm, and at the bottom of this, you come to what's known as the Mahoosic Notch. It's a little over a mile long, but just imagine a ravine, if you will, a deep ravine with cliffs on either side, and the ravine has been filled in with very sizable boulders. I mean, some of them are huge. Some of them are the size of small garages, really. And you got to make your way through this. And there's places where you just can't get through with wearing your pack. You know, I think I had to take my pack off about 5 times, either to get through a tunnel or to get up on a ledge, throw my pack up, and then I'd manage to get myself up. It took me about 2 hours to make it through the Mahoosic Notch. And, you know, depending on your perspective, they say it's either the most difficult or the most fun mile on the AT. So all depends on your perspective. I guess I had fun going through there. When it was in the rear view mirror, I wasn't complaining. Okay, so it was a good experience going through there. Anyway, I made it through the Mahoosic Notch, and I camped that night near a shelter. There's some of the shelters there in Maine, because there's no place to pitch a tent. They have these wooden platforms where you can pitch your tent. And I was glad I was there near a shelter with a privy, because I got sick. Okay, and I was up all night trotting back and forth to that privy, and I knew I was in a bad way. I didn't know what I had, but I knew I was in a bad way, and I knew I had to get to see a doctor. But from this point, I still had 22 miles to go to get to a significant road crossing where I could get to see a doctor. And of course, the next morning, you know, the trail had no sympathy on me because it's an immediately steep, rocky climb, ups and downs. And there was one point I was going up this one mountain called Mount Success, and I was wasted. I just, you know, I thought to myself, if there's cell phone service at the summit of this mountain, I'm calling 911 and I'm telling them to send a helicopter out here for me. I don't care what it costs. That's how sick I was and how bad I felt. But fortunately, again, human kindness smiled on me. There were two Nobos heading the other direction. A guy and his girlfriend. He was a nurse and she was the daughter of a doctor. And anyway, they asked me a lot of good questions. They says, well, maybe you got Giardia. They were carrying antibiotics. They convinced me to take some. They said, they gave me enough pills to get me to Gorham, New Hampshire, where I could get to see a doctor. And I did immediately start the antibiotics, and I did feel a little bit better. And I stealth camped that night. And then the next day I made my way to Gorham. But again, in Gorham, New Hampshire, again, I benefited from human kindness in the way of a doctor who saw me. You know, I made my way, I was given a ride to this hospital in nearby Berlin, New Hampshire. Doctor saw me, they ran a bunch of tests. And the good news was I didn't have Giardia, which is what I thought I had. But they said the bad news is that I've got C. diff, which is a bacterial infection of your GI tract. And that's even worse, okay? And the doctor told me, she said, you're not the first hiker we've seen that's come down with this. I was also told it's very contagious. He said you can get it from touching a surface, okay? And I don't know how I got it. You know, there were a couple hostels I stayed at in Maine that were pretty raunchy. But how I picked up C. diff, I don't know, but it was nasty stuff. And I was put on antibiotics again by the, you know, doctor wrote me a prescription. And I was in Gorham for several days, hoping you know, the antibiotics would kick in. I did manage to muster, you know, the gumption to resume my hike and going through the presidentials. And, you know, the presidentials, for those of you that have been there, know how spectacular they are. It's really a great place to be hiking. And I did make it through part of the presidentials. And after summiting Mount Madison, I spent that first night after resuming my hike in Madison Spring Hut, which is one of 8 huts along the AT that are run by the Appalachian Mountain Club. And the photo on the left is actually from the next day. I'm looking back at Mount Madison off there in the distance, and it's Madison Spring Hut nestled at the base of it. But the huts are nice, you know. They've got bathrooms, and there's a kitchen, excuse me, a kitchen, and you know, they've got a dining area. You can buy some stuff there, but they offer what's called work for stay to thru-hikers, to AT thru-hikers. And what that is in exchange for doing some work, like, you know, something easy, like, you know, doing dishes after dinner or doing some cleanup, you know, picking up trash, whatever. They allow you to have a hot dinner, and then after the paying customers turn in for the night, you can sleep on the floor in the dining room, which is a nice deal, because the weather in the Whites can get kind of nasty at times. So it's a good deal to be able to stay at one of these AMC huts, and they are pricey. If you got to pay the full admission, you know, they can be pretty pricey. But anyway, the other 2 pictures are just a couple of more representative huts in the White Mountains. The AT goes right over the top of Mount Washington. I was fortunate to catch Washington on a pretty nice day. And in the foreground, you can see what's known as the Cog Rail Railway. That picture on the left in the foreground, you can see that railway going up to the summit. And tradition has it that thru-hikers are supposed to moon the passengers if you happen to be standing in the vicinity of the Cog Railway when a train is going by. So fortunately, I wasn't close by when the train was going by, so I didn't have to resort to that. But in any event, they say that is a hiker tradition. But anyway, I made it to the summit of Washington, and there's a highway that takes folks up to the summit. The summit of Washington is pretty busy on a nice weekend day. There's a visitor center up there, and there's a very famous weather observation station on the summit of Washington as well. But anyway, after finishing that a section through the Whites from Pinkham Notch to Crawford Notch, I couldn't go on. I knew that I just, with that C diff, it wasn't any fun anymore. You kept having to worry about trotting in the woods at a moment's notice, and I was weak as all get out. I just didn't have any energy, and I knew I had to get off the trail. So I got back home, made it back home, saw a series of doctors, and the one gastroenterologist I was seeing, he says to me, it's going to be a year, if not longer, before your system gets back to normal. The problem is the antibiotics they put you on wipes out all the good biome in your GI tract. So he was right. It took about a year for me to get to some semblance of normal. But I did get back on the trail. I knew my through hike was over, but I was determined to still attempt to finish the AT. So I got back on the trail the following fall. I resumed my hike at Crawford Notch, and I was headed south, continued on southbound to finish. The picture on the left is headed up Mount Garfield, and there, the next couple slides are the Franconia Ridge, which is just, again, a spectacular stretch of trail in the White Mountains. And that's why I think, that New Hampshire, for me, is the most scenic of all the states. It's probably, in my opinion, it was the most difficult, but I think it's also the most scenic. Really some great views along the way. And I happened to catch it there too on Franconia Ridge with decent weather. It was brisk, but I've been up there before when the wind is really howling and it's socked in. So I was fortunate to catch the Franconia Ridge on a decent weather day. The last really long steep climb I had in New Hampshire was Mount Moosilauke, okay? And I'd been up Moosilauke before by way of another route, but headed southbound, at the base of Moosilauke is this sign at the base, which kind of, reading it, I knew Moosilauke was going to be steep, but this sign gives you a little moment of pause, right? But it really wasn't that bad. And in some of the steeper sections, they even had wooden steps anchored into the rock, some of the steeper sections that were a little bit slick. So I didn't find it too bad going up Moosilauke. I could see coming the other direction, headed down, where you got to be quite a bit more careful. But in any event, I made it to the summit of Moosilauke. It was socked in, no views again, which was kind of the same what I experienced when I was up Moosilauke before, but is what it is. You take whatever Mother Nature throws your way. Anyway, made it through New Hampshire, on into Vermont, across the Connecticut River, on into Vermont. In Vermont, it's got kind of a reputation as being a muddy state, and it's known as Vermud by through hikers. I personally didn't. I thought Vermont was a great state to hike through. I thought the trail was pretty darn nice. It had some nice views. I thought Vermont was a nice state to hike through. I stayed one night at this lookout cabin. It doesn't have any amenities or anything, but it's a good place to get out of the weather. You can sleep on the floor in that cabin, which a private owner has graciously made available to folks hiking through. I also spent one night in Rutland, Vermont, at this hostel, the photo on the right, the Yellow Deli Hostel, they call it. It's right in downtown Rutland. It's run by a religious community, but it was a great place to stay, really. The folks that ran it were great, and a very clean, well-run hostel. I enjoyed my stay there. Anyway, somewhere along the way in Vermont, at one of my falls, I cut my knee, stupid me, I didn't treat it. It was bleeding. I got out my old sweaty bandana, just wiped the mud off, and let it bleed out. I says, it'll be okay. You know, even though I'm carrying antibiotics and bandages with me, right? I'm too much in a hurry, keep pounding out miles. And my knee, a few days later, became very inflamed to the point where, you know, again, I was hobbling along the trail. And I says, you know, this isn't getting any better. I got to go see a doctor. Well, I was about 25 miles from a significant road crossing where I could get a ride somehow in to see a doctor. Well, I'm coming out of the woods early in the morning, and I come across it's at a gravel road crossing, and there's a gal there by the name of Eileen, and she's getting ready to do a day hike up Stratton Mountain. And she takes one look at me at my knee, and she says, "Get in the car." And she says, "You got to go see a doctor." I says, "Yeah, I know." She says, "Get in the car." And she drove me about 25 miles to this medical center in Bennington, Vermont, where again, I got to see a doctor. Eventually I made my way back home, ended up in Highland Hospital. The doctors told me how stupid I was, which I says, "Yeah, I know." And they says, "You know, what I had was cellulitis, a cellulitis infection in my knee. And apparently that can become pretty serious." So the doctors were not happy with me. At this point, I'm feeling pretty down in the dumps. Okay. I says, "Geez, you know, what other ailment can befall me?" And also I was really blaming myself, unlike some of the other health issues and injuries I sustained, that I said, well, it just, they happen. It wasn't really my fault. This one here with a cellulitis was totally my fault. And I blaming myself. And, my wife, she says to me, I'm really down in the dumps at this point, but Kayan says to me, "You better get back on that trail and finish this thing." So it was off the trail for about a week, but I did resume my hike. I made it, through Massachusetts, Connecticut. And the one nice thing about being knocked off the trail for about a week is that now, the leaves were starting to change color. So I started to enjoy the fall foliage. Really, really nice. Made it through those two states, got into New York. There's a picture from the Bear Mountain Bridge looking up the Hudson. But New York was kind of a tough state. And rocky in some sections. There were a couple of spots in New York where I says, "Geez," I says, "this is borderline dangerous. Some of these cliffs they got you going over with the AT." But anyway, I made it through New York without any further mishaps. I'm now getting near the end of my hike, and at this point I've got some mixed feelings because I know my adventure is about to be over. I know there's only a few more sunrises, a few more sunsets that I'm going to get to enjoy. But at the same time, I was looking forward to rendezvousing with Kayan and my family, and also, once again, enjoying the comforts of home. So I had kind of mixed feelings. And I had a very nice surprise on day 143, the last day of my hike, where I finished up in Vernon, New Jersey. And many members of my family were out to greet me, and they actually hiked about the last mile. I was surprised coming down the trail. There they were, and they hiked the last mile of the trail out with me, and it was really a very emotional finish for me. It was so nice to get that greeting and see, family. My 6 grandkids were all there, and it really made for a special day. So anyway, as Jill mentioned earlier, if you want, about my book, if you want to learn more about my hike, I've got a lot more stories in my book, if you're so inclined. I also have a chapter in there about the Northville Placid Trail. But anyway, my book's available on Amazon if you're interested. So at that point, I'm open to any questions. And again, feel free, if you've got any questions about gear or the trail, feel free to contact me by way of an email. I'll talk your head off for, hours if you let me, but feel free to get in touch with me.
I just want to thank you, Reinhard, for speaking to the group. I think you can people can ask Reinhard questions. If you would like to put anything in the chat, if you are finished, feel free to leave. But we can take some time to have people ask some questions. Gary, Diana is asking, how many days did you have to deal with deep snow?
Deep snow, I would say, you know, probably 3 or 4, you know, where the snow was up to my knees or whatever. That's all. I mean, sometimes, you know, the wind would be blowing and you'd encounter some drifts. I did take some time off to ride out a couple of snowstorms, but deep snow, you know, none of us, there's no through hikers that are carrying snowshoes. Okay. At least not that I saw. Yeah. I mean, typically you're gonna, if you know, when I started in February, I was expecting to get some snow, but you know, generally the snow will dissipate pretty quickly. You know, a few days it's gone. They said in 2018 that it would be known as the year of exceptionally bad weather. I don't know if that's true, but that's what some hikers were saying. But you know, deep snow, I'd say just, you know, maybe 3 or 4 days where I had significant snow where post holing was an issue.
Okay. Let's see. Bill Lindenfelter says, glad you finally made it. Welcome home. Dave Ferguson said, thanks, Reinhard. Great adventure. Let's see. From parents to everyone, excellent presentation. Thank you. I may be farthest away, joining you from Apex near Raleigh, North Carolina. Moved from Pittsburgh to here, December 2019, but maintain my ADK membership with Genesee Valley as my son and I are 29 peaks, but aim to become 46ers. Cheers all, Tony Hoppa. Thanks, Tony. Good to hear that information. Gary, Diana is asking again, how many calories did you plan on consuming per day?
Well, it's a good question, Gary. I don't know that I that I really planned on a specific amount. You know, I should have probably. They say, you know, typical through hiker is going to burn 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. I think I was burning more than that. I did some fairly, you know, fairly good miles every day. I tried to anyway. So I was probably burning 6,000 plus calories a day.
Okay. Luke is asking, do you know what southbound?
What month? What month?
Okay, thought there was something missing. What month southbounds start an AT hike?
You know, they can't start too early because if you're going to have snow, right? And
Yep.
I'm not, you know, it all depends a lot on the weather, but I would say people will start their southbound hike maybe as early as May, sometime in May, perhaps June, you know, but I think, you know, from Katahdin, it might be as early as May. I'm not, I wish I knew more accurately the answer to your question, Luke, but
That's okay.
you can't start up at Katahdin too early and then getting through the whites. You know, I've
Still a lot of
hiked
snow
up in
up
the
there.
whites. I've
Yep.
hiked up in the whites in June where I've been in snowshoes, right? And I was glad I had snowshoes with me at the higher elevations. But you know, a lot depends on the weather. Of course, with global warming now, things are a little bit different too. But it depends. You know, you can't start too early.
I'd like to ask one thing. If people are interested in Reinhard's email address, please write that down. And I'm going to ask him to stop sharing his screen pretty soon so that just the faces can be larger in the gallery.
How do I do that, Jill?
Well, you would.
Oh, I see. Wait a minute. I got it.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great. I think people had time to get that email address, and we can repeat it in the chat section if we need to. So another question in the chat is from Joyce Hensel. How did you deal with cell phone recharging?
Okay, good question. I carried, as most through hikers do, I carried a couple of these battery power packs, okay, with me. A lot of times during the day, I'd have my cell phone in airplane mode. Sometimes I'd even power it off. Of course, it takes energy when you power it back up, and then you lose a photo opportunity too. But it's one regret I do have is I wish I would have taken more photos along the way. But in any event, almost everybody on the AT is carrying these power packs that, you know, you can plug your phone into at night when you're on the trail, and it'll recharge your phone. Of course, when you get to a hostel or a place, you know, where you got electricity, everybody's scrambling for outlets, right, to charge their stuff. But that's, you know, that's how I kept my phone charged.
Okay, Jackson is asking, did you always have someone with you when you wanted to take a photo that included you?
Yeah, yes, yes, I didn't have a tripod or anything. And when I had when there was, you know, a photo opportunity for me to be in it, I had to have somebody else there to take the photo.
Okay.
I'm not, Jackson, I'm not in your league when it comes to photography, you know. I'm just a rank amateur with my cell phone. And you know, you would have done a much better job with some of the photos than what I did. But in any event, yeah, if I needed to have a photo taken with me in it, there needed to be somebody else around.
Okay. Katie Kusick is asking, besides the times when you were sick or injured, did you ever want to quit, and why? And if so, what made you continue on?
No, I was pretty determined, you know. I just had it in my mind I was gonna do this thing, and I was gonna finish this hike. And they do say, you know, that completing an AT hike is as much mental as it is physical. And I think there is some truth to that. You know, there's times where you're putting on waterlogged or even worse, frozen boots in the morning, you know, and your clothes is all wet that you got to put on, and you know, it's nasty weather out. And there are times where you question you know, you got to say, geez, you know, I'm having fun, right? But no, there were never any times where I felt like throwing in the towel. You know, I says, no, I'm gonna finish this thing. You know, I do have, you know, it's a figment of my imagination, I guess, about going back out there and giving another through hike attempt. But my trail angel back home has got, you know, other ideas about that. So I guess I'll just have to be happy with the through hike attempt I had. And I'm consider myself very blessed to have had the opportunity to hike the AT. So I really it was a great experience. You know, I'd encourage it. Anybody that has the opportunity to do that, take advantage of it, because I met so many great people. And you know, like I said, I benefited from many human kindnesses along the way. I made some lifelong friends, folks that I still keep in touch with along the way, you know, to this day. And it was really a great experience for me.
Okay, earlier on, Jerry Fletcher had said he's heard a lot of these talks, but he was really glad he caught your talk, Reinhard. He was really glad to be here. Let's see. Gary Diana is also asking, did you carry a rechargeable battery? What size?
No. I mean, the battery in my cell phone was obviously a rechargeable, but that was built into the phone. But no, I always carried, you know, extra batteries. I typically, when I'm hiking, I'll carry a spare headlamp. And I did for most of the AT have a spare headlamp, but I always carry in extra batteries with me. I mean, the last thing you want to have happen is your headlamp dies and you're at night out on the trail somewhere. It's not a good thing. Not a good thing to have happen. But in terms of rechargeable batteries, no, I can't. You know, I use for my headlamp, I use the regular Energizer or whatever. You know, AAA batteries.
Okay. Jean Pollock is saying, a great presentation, Reinhard. I always enjoy hearing you talk about your travels. Loved the book too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pond says, great to see you again, Reinhard. Quite an adventure you had.
Jim, good seeing you. Thanks for participating. It's been a long time. You got to get out on the trail with us sometime.
And Dale Platter is saying, Reinhard, I don't know if you remember me, but I have hiked in Maine and New Hampshire, as well as some of the Adirondacks. Was always a great adventure, as I always was trying to keep up with you. Great presentation.
Dale, it's good to hear from you. Of course I remember you. We had some great hikes together. It'd be good doing another hike with you. Give me a shout sometime.
All I can remember is Maine, it rained every freaking day.
Yeah, but as I recall, you and Ugin nestled down into that one hotel one night while I was up there on a mountain alone in my tent in the pouring rain.
We weren't stupid. I already had those peaks.
Good to hear from you, Dale.
Great
Okay.
presentation, Reinhard.
Amy is saying, thanks, Reinhard. Extremely interesting talk. We thoroughly enjoyed this. Amy and Doug Morrow.
Thank you.
Jack Schrader is asking, what time would you usually go to sleep and wake up?
Well, it's a good question. I turned in early. I mean, hiker midnight, they have the expression hiker midnight on the trail, is, somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock. I mean, if you're up till 10 o'clock, it's a late night. But, at the end of the day, I was pretty beat. I typed out my trail journal and I often turned in, by 8 o'clock. I was lights out for me typically. Okay. And, hence the reason I could get up early in the morning. I typically started my day. I was on the trail very often before 5 o'clock, but I never felt like I had a bad night's sleep. I always had a good night's sleep, but I did turn in early, as do most hikers. Like I say, if you're staying up till about 10 o'clock at night, that's a pretty late night on the trail.
So here's a comment from Bill Schweinfurth, and he is still supporting your AT hiking. And he says to the group, make sure if you read Reinhard's book that you post your review to Amazon. Currently, there is only one review of his revised edition. So there is no better support for your hike, Reinhard, than Bill Schweinfurth. He has been a great comrade there.
Bill was, I enjoy, Bill and I are good friends, and we've broken a trail a few times, haven't we, Bill?
Yes, we have, and your book is climbing in lifetime on the reviews as I'm looking on Amazon right now. So you're at 1,495, and I think by next week you'll be at the 500 mark slot. So you're moving up.
Okay.
What's the name of the book again? I'm looking at Amazon. I can't find it.
It's called Hiking the Appalachian Trail and the Northville Placid Trail.
It's easier just to type in Reinhard Gsellmeier and you'll find him right there.
Okay.
Did that and didn't find it.
Luke says, fabulous presentation, Reinhard. And Gary Diana says, Reinhard, ditto. On Bill's comment regarding your book, a must read, especially if you want to see what it's like to hike the AT. There's the source for getting the book has been put on the chat in case you'd like to do that. And I don't know, do people have other comments? Would you like to unmute yourself and say something yourself to Reinhard? I don't have to be the total intermediary here.
Reinhard, that was a fantastic presentation. I enjoyed every moment of your chat. It was really great, really good.
Thanks, Jim. I enjoy giving it. It's always fun to talk about my hike. So appreciate that comment.
Yeah,
Like the adventure, so it's nice to be able to relive it, I'm sure.
I think about the trail every day. Really, it's no joke. I think about the trail every day, and it just has a way of, I guess, the best way to describe it, about getting into your soul. So anybody that's got an inkling of hiking the AT, I'd encourage it. You don't have to be Superman to hike the AT. I'm sure just about anybody in on this Zoom call could hike the AT. Really, it's all about putting one foot in front of the other. That's all it is. And you don't have to go crazy pounding out long mileage days every day. And there's opportunities to take days off along the way. Just the average Joe or Jane can hike that trail. You got to just have a little bit of determination and you can make it.
I think you underestimate the amount of fortitude it takes. Get up every morning, pack up your tent, pack up your pack, and hit the trail again. I think it's an amazing feat.
Katie, did you have a comment?
I did. I had another question. Great presentation. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved all your pictures and all your descriptions. And it really feels like, I feel like I've read enough about it, but this really made me feel like, you know, like I was there, you know, like I could picture part of it. So I thought it was a great presentation. But I was also wondering, like, how much weight did you lose total? And did you really like, you know, pack on the pounds ahead of time before you started?
Well, Katie, I didn't intentionally pack on the pounds ahead of time. I was carrying a few extra pounds when I started my hike. You know, overall, I think the most that I had lost at any one point was at 22 pounds, you know, which I lost the first 4 weeks I was on the trail. After that, I really started eating more and maintained my weight. Of course, then I had to get off for extended periods. I put some weight back on. But, you know, I don't think I ever got to the point where I had lost more than 22 pounds. You know, I tried to make a more conscious effort about eating more, especially when I was in a town and I could kind of stock up. You know, the food adds weight to your pack, and I'm not interested in lugging around, you know, a 40, 50-pound pack. So I never felt like I was starving on the trail. I always felt like I had enough to eat, you know, but anyway, it's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Reinhard, did you ever eat a half-gallon of ice cream in one of your off the trail days?
That place, it's in Pennsylvania, that one park where they have the half-gallon challenge. And unfortunately, and I was so looking forward to that, you know, but that was closed. I was there early before they had opened for the season. I forget what the name of that park is. It's the half-gallon challenge, they call it. And if you finish a half-gallon of ice cream, I think they give you the ice cream for free. And then they give you a little wooden spoon you can write your name on, and they tack it up on the wall.
Yeah, you got to pay for the ice cream.
You know,
you pay for the ice cream. They give you the wooden spoon.
Oh, is that what it is, Dale? Okay, they give you the wooden spoon. But it's probably just as well that I didn't, you know, that the store wasn't open, that I didn't down a half-gallon of ice cream, because, you know, they would have raised a little havoc with me too. So it's probably just as well that I missed out on the half-gallon challenge.
Well, I think we probably need to wind it up. It's been a great presentation, Reinhard. I think everybody enjoyed it. We loved hearing your story. Thank you for sharing with it once again. It was a privilege to hear it.
Thank you.
I look forward to reading this exciting book to know even a little more about your hike. So
Appreciate
thanks
it.
everybody for attending.
Thank you very much. Nice for all. I appreciate everybody's comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Reinhard.
Thank you.
Reinhard. Thanks, Reinhard.
Thank you, Reinhard.
Reinhard.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reinhard. Great job.
Good job.
I might be able to keep up with you now.
Thank you, Dave and Jill.
Welcome.